It looks like we've got people starting to trickle in. We'll get started here in another moment or two. All right. Carol, do we have a quorum?
I do not see any other commissioners besides yourself and Vice Chair Bovet currently, but I do know that McPherson and Beach both intended
Can
to.
people hear me? Hello?
I can hear you.
Yes, you can hear me. Okay, great. Thanks, Rob. Oh, there you are, Carol.
I was just taking a look through.
Hold on. Okay, can you repeat that?
Yep, I was just taking a look through and I only see yourself and Vice Chair Bovet so far, although I do have confirmation from Commissioner Beach and McPherson about attending.
Okay. Well, in the interest of time, we don't have any. I guess we do have some action items coming up here. Okay, let's give it another minute or two and see if they don't log in shortly. If not, we'll go ahead and get started.
I do have Commissioner Beach here now, so we're just waiting on McPherson.
Okay, and with Carl, that will give us quorum. We don't have quorum without him.
I have to defer because I'm not sure how that works with the open auxiliary position. And Freeman is like a maybe, so.
Mm-hmm. Ken, do you have thoughts about whether we have quorum? Or Vice Chair Bovet?
Not sure. And just to let you know, I seem to have a temporarily weak connection. So if I turn my camera off, it's not because I'm ignoring you. I'm not sure. Is there? I didn't
Carl
look
is
at the
here
agenda.
now.
Oh, good.
Is that a quorum now?
And now we're
Yeah.
at quorum, yes.
Yes. Yeah. Great.
Oh.
Okay.
Perfect.
Well, welcome everybody. Today is the January 21st meeting of the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission. My name is Paul Solomon. I'm the chair, and we will go ahead and get started with introductions. Carol, you want to do roll call?
Of course. Chair Solomon,
Here.
Commissioner Beach,
Here, and my apologies, I also am having some difficulty with internet, so my camera will probably be off today. My apologies.
Vice Chair Bovet,
I'm here and ditto. If it looks weak again, I'm going to shut my camera off.
Commissioner Freeman, Commissioner McPherson,
Good afternoon, I'm here.
Commissioner Norton, Senator Przonski, Representative Lewis. So then we have quorum.
Great. And did we have anybody sign up for public comment today?
I did not get any public comment for today.
Okay, well, we will jump right into the award decision for the retail theft grant in Deschutes County. And I think Shelby, you're gonna lead us on this.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Solomon and Commissioners. Just to confirm, are you able to see the presentation and hear me okay?
Yes.
Great, okay. So for the record, my name is Shelby Grauer and I am a grant coordinator at the Criminal Justice Commission. I'm here today to present 2 organized retail theft grant program requests. To begin, we will review Deschutes County's District Attorney's Office's requests for additional funding. The Commission granted a provisional award of $17,877 to Deschutes County in July of 2024. Remaining funds of $31,940 were contingent upon the grantee providing 2 updates. The first was an update on a collaborative partnerships with retailers, community groups, or associations impacted by organized retail theft that have been established. Additionally, they were asked to provide an explanation of how those partnerships will be utilized to support and measure the reduction of organized retail theft within the program's jurisdiction. Deschutes County submitted a request for additional funds in December of 2024. They're requesting a total of $31,940. This request includes funds that will support personnel as well as training and travel. Deschutes County has established collaborative partnerships with the Redmond Police Department, Walmart, and Target. They're using these collaborative partnerships to establish an organized retail crime association of Oregon's Central Oregon chapter. They're implementing coordinated missions and hosting regular meetings between law enforcement, the district attorney's office, and retailers. This includes collaborating to implement organized retail theft focused training opportunities. Deschutes County will also share data with the established partners and have proposed 5 performance indicators that are intended to measure the reduction of organized retail theft within their jurisdiction. Staff recommend the approval of Deschutes County's request for the remaining funds of $31,940. If awarded the requested remaining funds, Deschutes County will receive a total award of $49,816 as outlined on the slide. Chair Solomon, I'll pause now to give an opportunity for any discussion as well as voting.
Great. Any questions for Shelby or thoughts about this recommendation? Okay, Shelby, do you have a motion drafted?
I do not have it drafted on the slide. However, I would be happy to read some motion language if that would be helpful.
I'm happy to just make the motion. I would move to approve the staff recommendation to approve Deschutes County's request for adjustment of $31,940.
Great. We have a motion by Vice Chair Bovet. Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Beach, Chair. Yes, I second.
Great. So motion made by Vice Chair Bovet, seconded by Commissioner Beach. Carol, would you mind doing roll call? Or-
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Chair Solomon,
Yes.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bovet,
Yes.
Commissioner McPherson.
Yes.
So then it passes.
Great. Thank you for that presentation, Shelby. And looks like you're on deck next for the retail theft grant, grant adjustment for the Springfield Police Department.
Yes, thank you, Chair Solomon. So yes, moving forward, we will look at our next request, which is an adjustment request from the Springfield Police Department. As a quick reminder, commission approval is required when an adjustment request includes the reallocation of 10% or more of the total grant award, or if the request includes adding, removing, or substantially changing a program. Otherwise, staff is authorized to process other adjustment requests. Springfield's request is coming before you today because they are requesting to reallocate more than 10% of their total budget award. They're requesting to move $93,600 of unspent funds from various categories to purchase a license plate reader camera system. Funds would be reallocated from contractual services, equipment, supplies, and training and travel as outlined on this slide. Springfield's adjustment request emphasized that approval of this request will enhance regional collaboration by strengthening data sharing and improving investigative outcomes. Additionally, it will maximize investigative tools by facilitating real-time apprehensions and supporting complex investigation. Chair Solomon, I will also pause here for any discussion and voting.
Great. I'll open it up for questions and comments. I have a question right off the top. Can you explain to me a little bit how this license plate reader system will work? Will it be outfitted in all of the Springfield police cars, or is it just one?
Absolutely, just a moment.
And probably more importantly, how will it be used?
Absolutely. So Springfield Police Department is proposing installing what they've referred to as a network of these cameras. They have not specified whether or not that would be specific to within a camera or within a system. So within it, to specify, some grantees have requested license plate reader trailers. Some have requested license plate readers that go within vehicles. Let me just verify with their budget request. But it does not specify the type of cameras that would be used beyond that it would be a contractual license plate reader camera contract for the value listed on this slide.
Okay, I don't want to hold this up, but I would love to get more information if it's available about how they're being used. Any other questions or comments from folks?
Chair Solomon, I have the same questions about the use of these devices and feeling like I don't have enough information to vote on this.
Okay, other thoughts from folks?
With a couple of commissioners uncomfortable, is there anybody from the Springfield Police Department with us here today at the meeting? Do we know? Sometimes we have grant applicants.
Yeah.
I think that might be helpful if there is any. If there's not, if you could if there is, raise your virtual hand. Let us know.
And Shelby, I'm assuming you've been the primary contact with Springfield?
That is correct, and I'd be happy to reach out for more information.
Okay, well, I'm going to suggest then that we table this till February. In lieu of getting additional information.
Okay.
Great. All right. Anything else on this that you want to share? Shelby?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. All right, moving along, next up is the JRI grant adjustment for Yamhill County. And I believe Lindsay is going to talk to us about that.
Yes, I am. Good afternoon, commissioners and Chair Solomon. Just to make sure, can everybody see my slides and hear me all right? All right. So For the record, I'm Lindsay Collins, and I'm the new Justice Reinvestment Program Manager here at CJC. Today, I'm asking you all to review and approve Yamhill County's adjustment request as it relates to the Justice Reinvestment Grant. This request is coming before you today for approval because it contains a programmatic change and exceeds 10% of the total grant award. Before we move into those details, for context, due to the passage of Oregon's pretrial legislation, Yamhill County is shifting their pretrial justice program from the Department of Community Justice to the Oregon Judicial Department, a change that has impacted other counties and has led to adjustment approvals from the commission in the past. Yamhill County is requesting to reallocate $178,140 from their JRP pretrial justice program to a new program's gender-specific and trauma-informed caseload. Specifically, funds will come from 2 pretrial officer position line items in the JRP pretrial justice program. The requested program would fund 1 full-time parole and probation officer. Yamhill County's gender-specific and trauma-informed caseload program proposes to provide evidence-based, gender-specific, and trauma-informed care to female adults on supervision who are primarily convicted of property crimes, are between the ages of 18 and 25, have children, and are both in the community and releasing from custody. The PPO will facilitate the evidence-based moving on curriculum group, provide risk assessments, collaborate in case planning, and supervise and monitor compliance. If approved, Yamhill County would like to backdate funds to July 1st, 2024, and be funded through December 31st, 2025, which is the end of their current project period. With that, I will turn it over to you all for any questions and your decision. And if needed, I can provide a slide for potential motion language.
Great. Well, first of all, welcome aboard, Lindsay. We're excited to work with you in the JRI efforts. Any questions from folks about this one?
Yes, Chair Solomon, Lindsay, I have questions about the current allocation. So based on the information, it sounds like there are 2 pretrial officer positions that are currently open, have not been filled, and that they already have this probation officer in place and they want to reallocate the funds for a position that has been in place because they have funds from not filling the 2. Is that accurate or no?
If I understand your question correctly, you're asking if those 2 positions have not been filled, and that's where the funding is coming from?
Yes.
So those positions had been filled, but with the legislation, I think it was, go back, let me just check really quickly. With Senate Bill 48, Yamhill County is moving their pretrial justice program from Yamhill County to the Oregon Justice Department. So that funding is being freed up essentially. So they'd like to move it from positions that were funded under their pretrial program, their JRP pretrial program, and move it to a new program. Does that answer your question?
Yes, so they replaced their JRP pretrial officers with release assistance officers funded by OJD.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? I'm sure we have a resident expert here on the commission about this as well. But I, for one, am supportive of this. So let's go ahead and would someone be willing to make a motion?
I would move to approve the recommended Yamhill County adjustment request to reallocate $178,140 as indicated on the slide we're looking at.
Great. Is there a second? No, Commissioner Beach is likely to abstain. So I think it's Commissioner McPherson, or is Commissioner Freeman on?
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion made by Vice Chair Bovet, seconded by Commissioner McPherson. Would you please take roll, Carol?
Of course.
Thank you.
Chair Solomon,
Yes.
Commissioner Beach,
I recuse myself for the obvious reasons.
Vice
you.
Chair Bovet,
Yes.
Commissioner McPherson.
Yes.
So then it passes.
Great. Well, thank you, Lindsay. We look forward to hearing more from you about JARA in the future.
Thank you, Chair Solomon.
All right. Now we're going to talk about treatment court grant solicitation. Adeline.
So sorry, my mic was off.
No
Can
problem.
everyone see this?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. All right. Well, for the record, my name is Adeline Padlina, and I'm the Treatment Court Grant Program Coordinator. And I have some great information for you all about the upcoming solicitation. And also, just so you know, no action is needed on your part unless after the presentation you determine that additional criteria is needed. So let's get into it. If the slide would change. There we go. Perfect. The time is now. We are getting ready to release the 25 to 27 Treatment Court Grant Program solicitation. It will be released next month. Available funding will officially be determined at the end of the 25 legislative session. And as before, the funding is going to be prioritized to support courts that adhere to consistent practices as are described in the Oregon Specialty Court standards. There are, however, a few notable changes about the grant program this biennium, one being the name. So you might have heard it referred to as the Drug Court Program. Previously, it was called the Specialty Court Grant Program. Now, taking some feedback from the Specialty Court Task Force, we are changing the name to the Treatment Court Grant Program. There's also going to be some new explicit guidance regarding funding requests. So this is an interest of increasing transparency from our end and hopefully decreasing the amount of reductions that we have to do. If you're new to treatment courts, we had to do about $9.5 million worth of reductions last biennium. We're hoping to avoid that this time. So what we've done is we have capped the total request as it should not exceed a 5% increase from the 23-25 award. So if a court is reapplying for this funding, they received funding in the last biennium, that request should not exceed 5%. And I want to be clear that this does include the funding that came from House Bill 4002. So if you all remember, there was some budget modification around Q3 where I think almost all the courts got additional funding. That 5% would include that funding.
Adeline, can I ask a quick question?
Please.
So is that in line with the 5% increase over the 23-25 biennium? Is that in line with our budget projections that are currently in the governor's recommended budget?
That is exactly where that 5% number came from.
Okay, great.
Any other questions about that before we continue on?
No,
all
thank
right.
you.
So the other thing that we will be doing is requests for OJD personnel will need to go directly to OJD. So as if you remember from House Bill 4002, that moved funding from the legislature to the CJC that used to go to OJD. Now it goes directly to OJD. And so folks will be using that funding for their court coordinators and other personnel. So any requests need to go directly to OJD. CJC grant won't be involved anymore. The other thing that we will not be funding are alumni-related expenses. I do want to be clear, this is not a reflection of alumni programs. It's just a reflection of our limited funding, and that funding should be going directly to participants that are actively in the court and in treatment. So if alumni folks have already finished through the process, right? Our hopes is that they will find funding for those programs to continue them on, but through grant funding other than the CJC grant. And then finally, just because the cost is getting very high for both the application fees and training and travel, we will most likely be capping the ability funding for the RISE conference. So All Rise does a conference every year. It's all over the country, and it's a great conference, but is a lot especially for large teams. So we don't know exactly what we're going to cap it at yet. We won't know until we see, obviously, their request, but we are expecting. And to give you some sort of context, last biennium before the additional funding that funded the budget modification, we capped it at 4 people could go to the training for the whole biennium for a total of 12,000 for that applicant. That is really what I have for you today. Commissioner Beach, can I answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Quick question with regard to the RISE conference. So now that, and I'm just delighted to hear that the state is willing to prioritize those court coordinators for those specialty courts. Forgive me, treatment court grant programs, whereas these grant funds have had to support those in the past, or that was the requirement. I'm just curious, is OJD expecting to receive a separate funding source for RISE conference attendees as well, such as judges, attorneys, DAs, or will it all still be encompassed in our CJC treatment court grant programs?
So I can answer part of that question, but I'm going to look to my colleagues about maybe the other part. So there will be the ability through the CJC grant to ask for OJD funds for training and travel. So that would cover RISE, and some funds for supplies. So that will still be part of the CJC grant portion, as it has been in the past. What I don't know is I don't know if OJD has specific funds for training and travel that is outside of the CJC grant.
Excellent. Thank you. I
Mhm.
appreciate it. And I know a lot of this is still up in the air, unknown. Thank you.
Of course.
Adeline, I'm curious about the OJD personnel. My memory is a little faulty here. So, in the 24 session, when those modifications were made to move the coordinators to OJD, did the counties receive that extra money in 24, or is this the first time in 25 that they will not have to be paying for the OJD personnel in their budgets?
So yes and yes. So that funding, the way that I look at it is that that was easiest for me to understand. It was that funding that was CJC funding that we were giving to OJD.
Mhm.
They gave that back to us, and then
Right.
the state gave them that money for the coordinators. So then they used that funding for the coordinators, and then we took the money that they gave back to us, right? And
Mhm.
we dispersed that among the counties through the grantees through the budget modification. So then going forward in 25, this will be the first time, to my knowledge, that they done it that way, so that they will still have that the OJD funding for the coordinators will come completely and totally unrelated to the CJC grant. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. So at this biennium will be really the opportunity for the counties to absorb that additional funding for other things in their budgets
Yeah,
outside of the treatment court coordinators.
exactly.
Got it. That's helpful. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right.
And like I said earlier, unless you all think that there is additional criteria that you would like to see in the solicitation, this was just informational, so you all know what's going to be going out next month.
Well, I think this is actually a great opportunity for us as a commission to discuss any additional criteria or priorities that we may want to see included in the upcoming solicitation. So I'd love to take a moment to hear commissioners' thoughts on this. Maybe I'll start off and just share that it was frustrating last go around when we had to make reductions to housing programs and some other things that due to not having enough funds. And I guess when I think about the range of things that treatment courts fund to support the success of the participants, I would like to think that things like funding for housing and ancillary supports are very helpful. So I'll share that as one point that I think is worth future consideration. Other thoughts?
I would jump in, Chair, Commissioner Beach here, with regards to that. I was just delighted with the developments with regard to the state being willing to cover those court coordinators who absolutely are intricate to these, treatment court grant programs. But there's so many other pieces to the pie that are absolutely required of this team. It's a team. The POs, the housing, incentives is a huge piece for us. And I know that's always kind of a difficult issue with regard to how those incentives can be used, but they have such a tremendous effect, positive effect on the participants as well. So I'm just really delighted that there's even the consideration of allowing us to be able to, consider other possibilities for these funds, because we as a small county, we really did have to prioritize these funds for the court coordinators. So I'm excited to see how we move forward. Secondly, real quick question, are there still going to be intended separated, and forgive my terminology, treatment court grant programs versus and I'm trying to remember the newly initiated treatment programs? Yes.
Yeah.
Is that going to be considered two separate? Is that still something that's offered and available?
Yeah, so they absolutely will still be separate. I do want to note that if there is a new court that hasn't received funding from the CJC before, they can still apply for what we call like the treatment court grant program. They still can, but if they do not want to, then they could. Assuming that we have it, it does depend a little bit on what our funding looks like and how much interest we have in doing the second smaller grant for new courts. But yes, as of right now, the plan is that we would have that implementation grant as well.
Great to hear. Thank you. And Chair, if I may, since we're
Please.
in discussion mode. So I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit more about what this process looks like. I think you mentioned the solicitation will most likely come out in February. Is it expected to be a two-prong process, two-phase process? I remember last grant process was based on the information that had been entered into the CJC program, and that Now we have kind of baseline requirements that certainly the grant review committee will be looking at. So maybe you could just talk in general terms if you're able to do so, if you know.
I am. The other thing I will say, if we, in the interest of time, I am happy absolutely to go through it real quick right now, but I'm also always happy to have a conversation later on if that is needed as well. I want to be respectful of the commission's time.
Absolutely. Totally up to you, to you, Chair. I completely understand. A lot of details.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is worthy of maybe some future time when we can have maybe a little bit more of a robust discussion. I do want us to be able to get to agency updates. And I know that Director Sanchagrin has another commitment. Not that that can't be provided by other staff, but if we can maybe table this for a future meeting, or I don't know if you have additional thoughts, Adeline, about how you might be able to share more robust information about the process, either emailing commissioners.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I can also real quickly say that, yes, Commissioner Beach, it will be a two-part process, very similar to the process that happened in the last biennium that you're familiar with. But yeah, I'm happy to email. Also, when we release the solicitation, I'll be doing a webinar. And so I'm happy to share that information. And that would be that will obviously go through what to expect for the new coordinators and new other grantees. So I'm happy to share that with you all as well.
Great. Vice Chair Bovet.
Just a brief comment as well before we move on. And my only comment, because this may be my last opportunity on the commission to comment on this particular grant program. I think it's really vital, and I'll just express it from a local government perspective. It's really vital that we provide maximum local flexibility within the range of funding options, because there are different resources in different counties. As I've said many times before, if you've seen one Oregon County, you've seen one Oregon County, and people just have different existing resources and plug and play in different ways. So maximum flexibility is what I'd consistently urge for all specialty and treatment court programs.
Great. Super. Was that been helpful, Adeline, in getting some thinking from the commission around?
Absolutely.
Great. Super. All right. Anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
That's it for me. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks for the update. All right. Agency updates. You still with us, Ken?
I am. Good afternoon, everybody, Chair and Commissioners. I really just have two updates today. The first one focuses on the start of legislative session. It kicked off. So all of that fun is just about to begin. We don't have yet a full rundown of all of the bills that we'll be tracking at the agency level. We're still reviewing them. Though I would point folks to the possible Senate resolution that will name the T-bone as the state steak. That is probably the funniest one I've read so far. So check that out if you want a little chuckle around lunchtime. It might make you hungry. But once we have a tracked bill list, like we've done in previous sessions, I'll provide a rundown with a follow-up email to commissioners after each meeting. Usually we've got 5 or 6, bills that we're really tracking that could have an impact on the commission. The big thing that we're planning for right now is that our budget presentation will be held mid next month. So from February 11th, 12th, and 13th, we will be before the Public Safety Subcommittee of Ways and Means, which meets at 8 a.m. every day but Friday. And we'll be making those presentations on Tuesday and Wednesday. So the 11th and the 12th will be the presentation days. And then the 13th will be an opportunity for public comment in support, or I guess in opposition if there's folks out there, to our budget. And so we're going to be engaging in outreach to stakeholders and grantees over the next several weeks to see if we can get some folks marshaled together for that date. Otherwise, if you'd like to tune in on the 2 previous days, on the Tuesday and Wednesday, that's when I'll be going through a rundown of our agency, all of our budget items, all of our POPs that were included in the governor's budget, to kick off that budget process. Any questions on legislative items that folks have, just in general, or anything you'd like to flag for us as we're going through our bill tracking list making?
Do you have any intel on 4002 and any modifications that might be made?
Well, that one, I would hate to put him on the spot, but I know that Vice Chair Bovet is doing some of the work on the technical fixes. I would say that most of the conversations that I have had specifically about the deflection grant are really still at that discussion stage to where I wouldn't really feel comfortable stating anything, publicly, because I don't think or know if any of those are going to come to fruition. So I'm not sure if Vice Chair Bovet would like to give a brief rundown on just a couple of the items you're working on for 4002, or if there's anything that's kind of ready for prime time.
Sure. I have your flag, folks, to Senate Bill 236. It's the technical corrections bill for 4002. It's got a number of ingredients in it already. There are a few other ingredients that may or may not come in. It has to meet basically 3 criteria: bipartisan, bicameral, and non-controversial in order to get into that bill. Now, I can assure you I've been through all the bills thus far. There's quite a number of other bills that would propose to tweak it in various ways, but those are all substantive bills. And I don't think we're done seeing the initial introduction of those. I'm certainly happy to share some numbers that I have. I don't have them handy right now, but some numbers that I have about those bills that are more substantive. But like I say, I don't think we've seen them all put into the hopper yet. But the only bill that I'm trying to manage and assist with is Senate Bill 236, just to make sure that the pieces of 4002 that were passed actually work, because a few of them actually don't and need some technical fixes to make them work.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions on legislative items? Seeing no hands, the one other thing that I want to mention is actually kind of hot off the presses today. And while it's not, there's no real details to how any of this might work, I just wanted to mention that with the release of one of the executive orders from the new presidential administration entitled Protecting the American People Against Invasion Executive Order, I wanted to flag that for commissioners that in section 17 of that executive order, it essentially states, I don't want to have to read it off for folks, but it essentially states that the federal government will be making efforts to withhold federal grant funds from states that are considered sanctuary states. And so, as we've discussed here in the past, and as I'll discuss during my budget presentation coming up in a few weeks, we do have, a fiscal risk that we're facing with regards to JAG dollars and other federal appropriations, given the state's status as a sanctuary state. So I just wanted to pass that on. Just because that's becoming a little bit more real. Our intention as an agency is to continue with business as usual, as we did during the previous administration. We'll be making our JAG and or any other federal applications as they come up. And then we will wait to see what that looks like as awards are made. So most likely that's something that we won't really face until late summer, early fall, as it is. But that's just something that we want to provide a heads up on. And it was probably very subtle, but in the discussion that we were just having about specialty courts as well, we focused a lot on the general fund, funds that we're going to have this biennium that will be higher than what we had in the past. That will also be very beneficial to us if we begin to come to a place where we can no longer devote federal burn JAG dollars to specialty courts. We'll still have, a net increase over what we've had in the past, given the rebalance that we were discussing. But I think there's a real possibility that those federal funds will not be forthcoming over the next few years.
So I remember when this happened last time during the previous Trump administration. And there were lawsuits that bubbled up through the courts. And can you remind us, was there a ruling that sets any kind of precedence about the use of, or the restrictions that they tried to employ? I know that we wound up getting the money back
Right.
with the next administration. They backfilled those years that we lost, but I'm curious if any precedent was set as a result of the or the suits that were filed by states.
Sure. It's a little bit complex, and I'd be happy to send all these documents to any interested commissioners. But there were essentially two different claims that were made in front of the U.S. District Court in Eugene, where the city of Portland and the state of Oregon came together to file that lawsuit. And my recollection is that the claim that essentially the administration was wrongfully withholding funds through the imposition of terms and conditions was basically, that was found to not be legal. There were also some constitutional rulings made at the district court level. When this was appealed to the Ninth Circuit, the Ninth Circuit upheld the determination that it was unlawful for the terms and conditions. But if I recall, there was some detail to it, but there was some nuance to the constitutional claims there. Essentially, that was 2019. And so then in 2020, when President Biden was elected, the decision was to no longer pursue a Supreme Court review. And so essentially the whole thing became moot at that point. And so when we began to have the money flow back to us again, that was under the Biden administration. And so there's some complexities to the lawsuit. In some ways, I would say it was complete, but maybe incomplete because of the changeover. And I would have assumed that the Trump administration would have pursued that to the Supreme Court after the Ninth Circuit ruling had President Trump been reelected in 2020. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag. I think there's some precedent out there. We're also not sure if that's the tactic that will be employed this go around. Essentially, there were three terms and conditions in the acceptance of the grant awards that we as a state and as an agency could not agree to. And so we were actually awarded the funds technically, but we could not at the state level accept them because we could not accept the terms and conditions.
Got it. All right. Oh, Vice Chair Bovet.
That was all just a great refresher of
Yeah.
my own recollection, and actually you recalled more than I did, but now that you mentioned it, I recall that as well. Is there any chance you could actually forward whatever you
Oh, certainly.
happen to have, if it's
Yeah.
convenient? I would love to kind of re-review all of that.
Yeah, I can forward. I have the court cases, the orders, and some of those materials. That's the stuff I have the easiest, and I'll send that on.
Fantastic. Yeah, don't go to any length, but if you got stuff handy, I'd love to read it all.
Yeah, sure thing.
And Ken, can you say a little bit about the decision-making process at the state level to pursue this through the courts?
That I don't have quite as much background on. That was before my time.
Okay.
And so I don't have any real knowledge of how, because we essentially took this on with the city of Portland on our own. I think there is a greater focus at the executive branch enterprise level during this time, and a maybe expectation or worry that this could extend beyond burn JAG grants. Really,
Right.
we were pretty unique during the last administration. And so I think there's a much greater centralized focus. And so that decision making would likely be out of CJC's hands in this instance, if it were to occur. But I think that's still developing as well. If CJC was the only agency impacted, then it would be a different story.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right. And Ken, so I think this also puts at risk unspent JAG funds as well, potentially.
Potentially. I think that there was not an effort last time to try to put new terms and conditions, for example, on previous unspent funds. Though what we did experience was a general slowdown and a greater difficulty getting through budget modification requests that we put forward. And so that could be a possibility moving forward this time as well.
All right. Any other questions for Ken? Well, good luck with the budget hearings.
Thank
We'll
you.
be paying close attention and look forward to seeing everyone at the February meeting. Unless there's any other business, we will adjourn. Thank you all.
Sorry I missed the meeting. I'm in Washington, D.C. working today, so thank you all.
Yeah, good to see you, Commissioner.
Bye-bye.